The council chamber of Meridian Prime floated above the blue clouds of the gas giant like a blade of glass suspended in eternity. Its architecture defied both gravity and humility, a colossal ring of light and living crystal, rotating slowly around a pulsating core of white energy. Every delegate chamber shimmered with its own hue, each representing a species older, wiser, or crueler than the last. At the chamber's center, an artificial sun burned, a symbol of unity among the civilizations of the Orion Reach. But tonight, that light felt cold. The council was in closed session, and one name echoed through every translation feed like a contagion: humanity. The Terrans have grown reckless. The words slithered from Archon Zyrith of the Vorn Dominion, his voice a ripple of static that made even the sound field flicker. His translucent body caught the artificial light like oil on water. They interfere in frontier systems, expand without sanction, and now they tamper with pre-warp civilizations. We've tolerated their insolence long enough. Dozens of eyes, lenses, and photonic clusters turned toward the central dais. The chair of the council, Lady Seraphal of the Illyri, spread her wings of white plasma in quiet command. Our protocols forbid war against an emergent species, Archon. Humanity is still dangerous, interrupted the Rel speaker, whose form resembled a column of molten glass. They are unpredictable. A species that worships chance and chaos cannot be reasoned with. They will destroy themselves or us with their curiosity. A murmur rippled through the amphitheater, thousands of alien delegates shimmering in shifting light. Only one voice did not join them. High Admiral Corthane of the Vale Republic, a creature of scale and stone, leaned forward. His eyes glowed dimly. They fought back the Devore swarm at Titan's Gate. They held the line where even we faltered. You call that chaos? I call it resolve, the molten being hissed. Resolve born of ignorance. Corthane rumbled a growl that shook the chamber's shields. Or perhaps faith. The word landed like a fracture across the council floor. Faith. Among the stars, belief was an antique thing. The idea of one creator had long been dismissed as primitive superstition, a comfort of small minds before they learned to command suns, and yet the humans clung to it. Whispered prayers before battle, crosses and crescents on their armor, words of gratitude to an unseen force even their science couldn't name. It unsettled the council, because it made them different. Lady Seraphal's voice rose, calm but edged with command. The question before us is not their belief. It is their threat. If humanity continues expanding beyond Sol without compliance, we risk destabilizing half the Orion sectors. She touched a control crystal. A holographic map unfolded, showing Terran expansion lines cutting through council territories like veins of fire. Therefore, she continued, the proposal is to initiate Protocol Nullus, the quiet erasure of their species before open conflict becomes inevitable. The chamber darkened. Every delegate's vote glyph flickered, waiting. In the silence that followed, someone whispered a small, strange sound. It was almost like a prayer, forgive us, if they find out. From somewhere deep within Meridian's orbit, a signal pulse cut through the council's comms net. A coded signature unauthorized. Security filter screamed warnings. Chairwoman! A council guard transmitted. An unidentified Terran vessel just exited FTL at ring approach 6. No clearance, no escort. Before Seraphal could respond, the doors to the chamber shuddered. Then with a resonant clang, they opened. He stepped through the smoke of the security drone's vapor trails like a man walking out of a storm. Ambassador James Kale, Terran Diplomatic Corps. His uniform was scorched at the edges, his face lined with exhaustion and something deeper, resolve, maybe faith. In one hand he carried a small data chip, in the other, a folded Terran flag. Every guard in the chamber leveled a weapon. Kyle didn't flinch. Funny thing about closed sessions, he said, his voice carrying despite the thick silence. Someone always leaves a window open. Seraphal rose, her eyes narrowing to shards of light. Ambassador Kale, this is a restricted... Yeah, I gathered. Kale stepped forward, boots echoing against the crystalline floor. You're planning our extinction. That's usually not an open invite meeting. The guards advanced. Kale raised a hand. Don't bother. If I was here to start a war, you'd already know. He placed the chip on the central dais. It pulsed once, then projected a massive holofeed over the chamber, a sight that drew 100 gasps and equivalent alien gestures of shock. A Terran fleet. Dozens of ships in perfect formation, encircling the Meridian system. Not attacking, just waiting. Seraphal's tone tightened. "You dare," Kale interrupted softly. "I dare to ask why." He looked around the chamber, eyes meeting 100 alien gazes. "Why are you so afraid of us? Because we're stubborn? Because we still believe in right and wrong when it's inconvenient? Or because we still look at the stars and think, maybe someone put them there for a reason?" The Vorn Archon hissed. "Faith does not win wars." Kale's reply was quiet. "No, but it keeps you standing long enough to end them." A heavy silence settled. The fleet outside the window glimmered like a ring of defiance. Kale's voice softened. "You talk about preventive strikes and stability. We talk about survival. Every time we're pushed, we push back. Not because we crave war, but because we remember loss. Because we still have something to protect." He looked toward the chamber's false sun. "Maybe that's what scares you. Not our weapons, not our ships, but that we're still human, and that we'll fight like hell to stay that way." Seraphal studied him in silence. For the first time, something uncertain flickered in her expression, a doubt she didn't want to name. Kale turned toward the door. "You can vote for erasure if you want. But understand this, we already know, and we came here anyway." He paused. "Not to threaten. To remind you, every civilization deserves the right to exist, even the ones that still prey." And with that, he walked out, leaving the chip on the table. The Terran fleet glowing beyond the chamber glass like a halo of judgment. The council did not speak for a long time. Even the lights dimmed as though the station itself was thinking. High Admiral Corthane finally broke the silence. "Courage," he said quietly, "is silent until it must speak." And somewhere far beyond the system, the human fleet held position, unmoving, unwavering, waiting. The council chamber stayed dark long after Kale's footsteps vanished. For beings who could bend light, command gravity, and rewrite genetics, silence was the rarest element in the universe. But now it filled the air, heavy, metallic, and trembling. Lady Seraphal stood alone at the dais, her wings of plasma dimmed to a ghostly shimmer. The hologram of Earth's fleet still hung before her like a wound in space. "And the projection," she whispered. The image blinked out, leaving the chamber hollow and bare. Across the table, Archon Zyrith coiled his translucent limbs in agitation. He trespassed the sanctum of the council. "You saw his insolence, his threat. Humanity must be erased before that fleet acts." High Admiral Corthane's gravel-thick voice rumbled low. "You call that a threat?" "I saw restraint. If their fleet wanted to strike, Meridian Prime would already be a whisper." Seraphal looked down at the Terran flag Kale had left. The cloth was simple. Blue and white, edges scorched, its fibers still faintly smelling of smoke and iron. He carried this through fire, she thought, and walked in unarmed. Something about that unsettled her more than the fleet itself. Hours later, Meridian Prime rotated into the planet's shadow. The night side of the gas giant shimmered with auroras that danced across its cloud bands like veins of light. The council hall emptied, but not entirely. Corthane remained, gazing out at the Terran formation in orbit. Dozens of ships, their running lights faint but defiant, arranged in the shape of a ring. Not siege, not attack, something else. A message, perhaps. A promise. A soft metallic tone broke the silence. "A comlink, Admiral Corthane," came the voice of his aide, filtered through static, sensors picking up an unknown signal. "Source, deep meridian belt within your patrol jurisdiction." "Unknown?" Corthane turned, his scaled brow furrowing. "Define unknown." "Pattern doesn't match any council encryption. It's old. Pre-council, maybe pre-galactic era." The Admiral's tail flicked in thought. "Send the coordinates. I'll handle it personally." Meanwhile, somewhere aboard the Terran vessel Resolute, James Kale stood alone in the observation bay. The ship's hull hummed with quiet power, its dark frame reflecting the stars like obsidian glass. Beyond, Meridian's auroras rippled across space, a silent ballet of light over a world that wasn't theirs. Kale's reflection stared back at him. Eyes tired, face unshaven but steady. He opened his hand and looked at a small silver token inside, an old Earth coin. On one side, faded words, "In God we trust." He smiled faintly. "Guess I just proved we're still crazy enough to show up to our own funeral." A quiet voice interrupted. "You think they'll listen?" Kale turned. Lieutenant Anara Ruiz, communications officer, youngest on the mission, stood at the doorway. Her dark eyes carried the question neither of them wanted to ask aloud. Kale shrugged. If they don't, we'll still make them think before they fire. Sometimes that's enough. Ruiz stepped closer, arms crossed. Sir, may I ask something personal? He nodded. When you walked into that chamber, were you afraid? Kale chuckled softly. Terrified, she blinked. You didn't look it. That's the trick, he said. Courage isn't feeling safe. It's walking in anyway. Ruiz hesitated, then whispered. When you said, maybe someone put the stars there for a reason, did you mean that? Do you really believe in, someone? Kale looked out the viewport again, at the endless sprawl of stars beyond. After everything I've seen, black holes, dying suns, the way life keeps clawing back from extinction, yeah, I do. He turned the coin in his fingers, light glinting off its edge. I don't think it's all an accident. And if I'm wrong, then believing still makes me stronger, gives me something they can't predict. Ruiz smiled faintly. The aliens don't get that. Maybe they will, Kyle said. Eventually. Back near the Meridian Belt, Corthane's cruiser, Vale's Honor, descended into a region of fractured rock and electromagnetic storms. Signal's getting stronger, Admiral, reported his helmsman. Repeating every 12 seconds, it's haunting. Put it on audio. The bridge filled with a faint, distorted hum. Beneath it, something like a heartbeat. Then a sequence of tones rising and falling like ancient chimes. Corthane's eyes narrowed. That's not random. No, sir. But it's not Council tech. It's older. The Admiral leaned closer to the holo display. Amplify, the sound rose. The tones became a pattern. Then, barely audible beneath the static, a fragment of a voice, human, help. Meridian, breach, not human. The bridge went still. Replay that, Corthane ordered. Can't, sir. It's decaying. Static flared and the ship's systems flickered. The hum deepened into a pulse that shook the entire cruiser. Something's out there, whispered the helmsman. Corthane's claws tightened on the railing. Raise shields. Outside the viewport, the blackness shifted like something vast and coiled moved in the dark, invisible but present. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The Admiral's breath rasped through the calm silence. Send immediate report to the Council. Tell them there's something ancient in their backyard. 2 hours later, Serafal convened an emergency council. The chamber filled with whispers and fear, not strategy. The signal was verified, she said. An unidentified entity in the Meridian Belt. Its broadcast contained human vocal patterns, but no Terran vessel has entered that region. Archon Zyrith hissed. A ruse! The humans are manipulating us. Corthane slammed his clawed fist against the table, the sound echoing like thunder. You weren't there. That signal wasn't human, it was older than our language. Serafal looked between them. Regardless, Meridian Prime's defense grid is on alert. And the Terran fleet is holding position, Corthane finished. They're not attacking. Almost as if they're waiting for something. Far aboard the Resolute, Kale received the encrypted feed first. The signal recording. He played it once, then twice, then closed his eyes, that voice. It wasn't random. It wasn't a trap, he recognized it. Lieutenant, he said slowly. That transmission, trace it again. Filter for Terran phonetics. Ruiz frowned. Sir, it's degraded. Just do it. A few tense seconds passed. The computer processed, filtered, reconstructed. The voice became clear. Kyle, Meridian, not human. Coming? Ruiz turned pale. Who is that? Kale's throat tightened. That's Commander Saito. He died 2 years ago on the frontier. His ship disappeared beyond Vega Drift. He stared at the console, heart pounding. Whatever was in that belt, it was using a dead man's voice. In the council chamber, the delegates argued, unaware that above them, reality itself was about to shift. Meridian Prime's outer satellites flared with interference. Space rippled like fabric pulled too tight. And from the blackness beyond the belt, something stirred. Vast, unseen, older than any of them. Kale watched the readings spike. Lieutenant, he whispered, open a line to the council. They need to see this. Ruiz hesitated. After what they planned, he nodded. Even enemies deserve warning. She stared at him. Why help them? Kyle's eyes were hard but calm. Because we're human. We don't get to pick who deserves mercy. As the Resolute's transmission reached the council, the chamber's holographic displays filled with a storm of light. Gravitational distortions, collapsing fields, shapes forming in the void like embryonic stars. Lady Seraphal whispered, "By the core, what is that?" Kale's voice came through the feed steady and sharp. "This isn't War Council. This is something else. You wanted to erase us, fine, but whatever's out there doesn't care who's human or not. You can debate later. For now, run." And as the first ripples of the unknown struck Meridian's defense grid, the counselors saw something they had never imagined possible. A human ship breaking formation, moving forward alone, between the threat and the world that tried to destroy it. Meridian Prime's night horizon burned with silent light. From orbit, the gas giant storms flared in colors never seen before, ultraviolet ribbons folding into geometric patterns, lightning without thunder, shapes forming and vanishing like dreams. Inside the command deck of the Terran vessel Resolute, alarm screamed. Gravitic distortion levels rising, 7.2 and climbing. Reese's hands flew across the console. "It's bending the entire magnetosphere." Kale steadied himself against the rail. "Origin?" She hesitated. "Everywhere." The ship's viewports darkened as the stars themselves seemed to twist. For a moment, space looked alive, rippling with veins of pale blue light as though something massive moved beneath its surface. "Send all scans to the Council," Kyle ordered. "Maybe someone down there can explain this." "Assuming they're still listening," Ruiz muttered. Kale didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the distortion, the way it pulsed in a rhythm too deliberate to be random. It wasn't chaos. It was communication, and deep in his bones he felt it watching. Far below, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages, some in panic, others in accusation. The holographic map above them bloomed with red as the anomaly expanded, swallowing entire orbital paths. Lady Seraphal raised her voice above the din. "Silence. We need order." Archon Zyreth's translucent body flickered with agitation. "This is their doing. The Terrans brought this here." Corthane growled. "If they had this power, they would have used it centuries ago." Seraphal cut across them. "Enough. Patch me through to the Terran ship." A shimmering portal of light opened at the center of the chamber, revealing Kyle's worn face projected from the Resolute. Behind him, console lights flashed red. "Ambassador Kale," Seraphal began, her tone a mix of command and disbelief. "What have you done?" Kyle gave a dry smile. "I was about to ask you the same." On the display, the space beyond Meridian shuddered again. This time the distortion resolved into shape. A vast outline too large for comprehension. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even matter as they knew it. It was something older. The lights in the chamber flickered. The holofeed glitched, then a sound filled every mind in the room, not heard. Felt a pulse, a whisper, a voice made of gravity and echo. "We remember." The delegates froze. Some fell to their knees. Others screamed as translation implants overloaded. Seraphal clutched her head, her wings flaring. What is this?" Kyle's voice broke through the static. "It's broadcasting. Thought forms. Quantum resonance, no language, just direct neural imprint." "We remember." "The makers." Kale's eyes widened. "Makers?" The voice deepened as if dragging itself through eons of silence. "They left their mark upon flesh, then forgot. You carry the spark, you are the echo." Ruiz stared at the readings, pale. "Sir, it's addressing us, humanity." Kale's pulse quickened. "Put it through translation grid 9. Try to stabilize the signal." "It's not data," Ruiz whispered. "It's memory." On screen, the anomaly's light flickered faster, and then images flooded the feed. Fragments, visions, a world of glass oceans inspired continents. Beings of light shaping matter with their hands. Then, war, silence, extinction, and among the ruins, something small, fragile, human. Not from Earth, but human in shape and essence. Kale's breath caught. Dear God. The council reeled. For the first time in history, their greatest minds had no explanation. Byreth hissed, trembling. "Impossible. Humans are primitives, newcomers, and are they?" Corthane rumbled. "Or descendants of something older than all of us?" Seraphal looked at Kale's projection, her face unreadable. "What are we seeing?" Kale shook his head. "Not what, who?" I think this thing remembers the origin of human life before Earth. Blasphemy, the Rel speaker spat. Life evolved naturally. Kale's eyes hardened. Maybe we just found Earth again. Suddenly, the anomaly surged. The entire system trembled. Meridian's upper atmosphere erupted in arcs of light stretching into orbit. Ruiz shouted, "Sir, we're getting energy spikes near the belt. Multiple contacts." Kale turned to the viewport and saw ships. Not human, not council. Metallic husks emerging from the distortion, moving with insect precision. Thousands of them. Defense drones? Ruiz whispered. Kale's jaw clenched. No. Guardians. The first beam hit the council's outer station. The explosion flared across the horizon like a sunrise. Admiral Corthane to Fleet Command, roared the Veil leader. All ships, intercept. Form defensive perimeter around Meridian. Kale hit the comm. Serapha, listen carefully. Those things aren't targeting humans, they're targeting you. Explain. The voice said we carry the spark, the echo of the makers. These machines were built to protect it. To protect us, they think you're the threat. For a long second, no one spoke. Then Seraphal whispered, So the universe itself has chosen a side. Not the universe, Kale said softly. Something older. On the Resolute, Ruiz glanced at him. We could leave, sir. Jump out of the system before this gets worse. Kale didn't move. No, we stay, sir. He looked out at the chaos. Alien fleets igniting the void. Meridian's rings breaking apart under the shock waves. They wanted to erase us, Lieutenant. I'm not going to watch them die for the same arrogance. He toggled the command line. Patch me to the council again. The chamber flickered with static before his image reappeared, sweat streaking his face. Counselors, listen to me. You can't fight those things conventionally. They're not ships, they're constructs, responding to any weapon signature as hostility. You'll need to go dark completely. Archon Zyrith hissed. You expect us to hide? Kale snapped. I expect you to survive. Seraphal stepped forward, her light dim but steady. And what will you do, Ambassador? Kale exhaled. What humans always do when logic runs out. We improvise. Outside, the Resolute broke formation, angling toward the heart of the anomaly. Ruiz, Kyle said, strapping into the pilot's seat. Set autopilot on manual intercept vector. If that thing's remembering humanity, maybe I can make it listen. She stared. You can't talk to a god, sir. Kyle smiled faintly. Maybe not, but you can remind it we're still here. As the ship dove into the luminous storm, its hull burned white hot, systems failing one by one. Kyle's hands gripped the controls, his body trembling under the gravity pulse. The voice echoed again, closer this time, almost. Curious, you are not them, yet you carry their faith. Kale whispered. We're what's left of them. We don't build worlds anymore, we survive them. Faith, the voice murmured. Still, the storm around him flared. For a moment, Kale saw shapes in the light, human silhouettes, thousands of them fading into radiance. Then we remember you, and the light vanished. On Meridian Prime, every ship stopped firing. The drones froze mid-flight, drifting like broken stars. The anomaly collapsed inward, folding on itself until it became nothing more than silence. In the council chamber, stunned delegates looked at the empty space where Kale's transmission had been. Seraphal whispered, Where is he? Corthane lowered his head. Gone, or heard. Hours passed before a faint signal returned from the debris field. A Terran life pod, orbiting the edge of Meridian's dawn. Inside, James Kale stirred. He opened his eyes to sunlight filtering through the viewport. Ruiz's voice crackled through the comm, half in disbelief. Sir, how did you survive that? Kale smiled weakly, staring at the sunrise washing over the gas giant. Not luck, Lieutenant. He closed his eyes. Someone wanted me to live. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the fire. From orbit, Meridian Prime looked wounded. The once perfect symmetry of its ring habitats was gone, fractured arcs drifting through amber clouds. Dozens of ships, both Terran and Council, hung motionless among the wreckage like ghosts. In the quiet command deck of the Terran ship Resolute, systems flickered weakly to life. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and ozone. Kale sat strapped to a medical cot, bandaged but awake, staring at the light of Meridian's dawn. He'd seen too many dawns that felt like funerals. Lieutenant Ruiz entered quietly. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with soot, yet her voice was steady. Fleet Command reports 27% survival rate, sir. Council losses are worse. Cale closed his eyes. And the anomaly? Collapsed completely. No radiation, no debris, nothing. It just stopped. She hesitated. Whatever it was, it remembered you. He gave a tired smile. That's comforting. In a terrifying kind of way. Ruiz folded her arms, glancing out the viewport. Council's asking for a meeting. Lady Seraphal herself. Cale arched a brow. Still alive, then? She's requesting you personally. Says it's urgent. He exhaled, standing slowly. Guess I should have known peace talks always start after something almost kills everyone. Meridian Prime. Council chamber ruins, the Kawan. Once glorious chamber was now a dim skeleton of light and shattered glass. Emergency drones hovered through the debris, projecting soft illumination. The central dais was cracked, and the false sun that once symbolized unity was dark. Kyle stepped into the hall with Ruiz and 2 Terran guards. The sound of his boots on broken crystal echoed like thunder in a cathedral. At the center, Lady Seraphal waited. Her wings of plasma were dimmed, one side fractured and uneven. Yet her eyes still held that unearthly calm. Ambassador Cale, she said, voice quiet. You survived. Seems that's what we're good at, Cale replied, glancing around the wreckage. Though I wouldn't call it living, Seraphal inclined her head. Then perhaps survival must evolve into something greater. Behind her, Admiral Corthane stood, armor scorched, one arm in a mechanical brace. He nodded in silent respect. Admiral, Kyle said. You held the line, Corthane rumbled. You became the line. A rare flicker of shared understanding passed between them. Warriors from different worlds who'd both learned that heroism never felt like glory. Only exhaustion. Seraphal gestured toward the remains of the central table. We've confirmed the anomaly is gone. The drones, shut down as if deactivated by command. Whatever intelligence controlled them is beyond our comprehension. Kyle studied her. You think it was alive? I think it was remembering, she said softly. It recognized something in you, in humanity. Something we forgot long ago. He tilted his head. Faith? Her gaze lingered on him. Perhaps. Or purpose. Cale took a seat on a broken pillar. So what now? You were about to vote on wiping us out. Kind of awkward to plan a peace treaty after an apocalypse. Seraphal didn't flinch. I won't hide our guilt. Fear drove us to that vote. But today, the universe reminded us of humility. Cale raised an eyebrow. Didn't think humility was in the council charter. A small, almost human smile touched her lips. Perhaps it should be. She looked at the ruins around them, the shattered light of meridian skies pouring in through fractured walls. When the anomaly spoke, it didn't name species. It spoke to all sentient minds that could hear it. And it remembered humanity first. That means something. Cale leaned forward. Or maybe it means we're next in line to repeat the same mistakes. A long silence settled between them. Finally, Corthane broke it. If we rebuild the council, we must rebuild differently. The old order sought control. We need cooperation. Between enemies? Kyle asked. Between survivors, Seraphal corrected. This tragedy proves no species holds dominion over the stars. They're not ours to own, only to share. Kyle considered that. He'd heard idealism before, from politicians who'd never seen fire up close. But something in her tone wasn't political. It was sincere. Outside, the wreckage drifted past like slow-moving constellations. The remains of the Terran and Council fleets now formed one orbiting graveyard, united at last in silence. Ruiz turned to Kyle. Sir, we should decide if we're staying. Earth Command's expecting a report. Cale didn't answer immediately. He looked back at Seraphal. You said humility. That's rare for a civilization that builds suns in its living room. She met his gaze evenly. And you said faith. That's rare for a civilization that builds weapons to reach the same stars. Cale smiled faintly. Touché. He looked toward the heavens beyond the chamber. Meridian's auroras were returning, soft green waves tracing the curve of the planet. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Cale said quietly, When I was a kid, my father used to take me out during blackouts. We'd lie on the roof and look at the stars. He used to say, we weren't the first to see them. We just forgot how to look. Seraphal listened, silent. He turned back to her. Maybe that's what all of this is about, remembering how to look again. A faint tremor passed through the floor as Meridian's orbital generators powered up, patching life back into the dying systems. For the first time since the crisis began, the artificial sun flickered, weak but returning. Light spilled through the chamber, fractured but still beautiful. Serafal extended a hand. Then perhaps, Ambassador Kale, it's time we start looking together. Kale hesitated only a moment before taking it. Her hand was cold, alien but steady, and for the first time in galactic history, human and non-human stood as equals not by law but by loss. Later, Meridian's outer ring Kyle stood alone on a platform overlooking the debris field. The Terran fleet was repairing, council drones assisting. Survivors from dozens of species worked side by side in silence. No anthem, no ceremony, just shared exhaustion. Ruiz joined him, handing over a mug of recycled coffee. Never thought I'd see the day. What day's that? Kale asked. Aliens helping patch human hulls, she said with a faint grin. Even fixing the paint, Kale sipped. Maybe they're afraid of what happens if they don't. Ruiz shook her head. No, sir. I think they finally saw what we are. He turned, curious. And what's that? She looked at him with quiet conviction. The species that still believe something bigger than them might be listening. Overhead, the stars shone through the shattered glass of Meridian's upper atmosphere. For once, they looked close enough to touch. Kale set down his mug and whispered almost to himself, "This can't just be an accident." Ruiz didn't reply. She didn't need to. Behind them, Meridian's lights glowed again, not bright but alive. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council, reborn in ashes, stood under the same sky as humanity. 3 months after Meridian, the galaxy was quiet again, unnaturally so. Trade routes reopened, the Council rebuilt. The official reports labeled the event the Meridian Cataclysm, and most species were content to bury it under bureaucracy and fear. But humans had never been good at forgetting. In orbit above the half-repaired world, Kale stood on the deck of the Resolute 2, watching stars slide past in slow silence. The Council had given him a ceremonial post, liaison of peace reconstruction. He knew it was just a polite exile, a way to keep humanity close enough to watch, but far enough not to touch anything dangerous again. Except something was touching back. Deep Space Transmission Center. Outer Rim, a small outpost floated in the black void. Outpost Seraph 9, a joint Terran Council installation meant to monitor the galactic edge for residual energy. Technicians whispered about the static that sometimes filled the receivers at night cycles. It wasn't normal static, it pulsed like a heartbeat. One night it changed. A young operator named Erin jolted awake from her console nap when her monitors flickered. Lines of code scrolled in symbols she didn't recognize. The pattern repeated 3 times and then, "Hello again," the lights dimmed. The temperature dropped. Every ship within 1,000 kilometers reported a single word appearing across their HUDs in unison. Remember. Council War Room. Meridian Prime Kyle slammed the datapad onto the table. "You told me the anomaly collapsed." "You said there was nothing left." Admiral Corthane's mandibles flexed uneasily. "We verified its dissipation. Every reading showed a complete energy decay." Serafal sat opposite him, hands clasped tightly. Her expression was calm, but the air around her shimmered with faint energy, the same spectral light that had once poured from the anomaly. "It's not returning," she said softly. "It's awakening," Kale frowned. "Awakening from what?" She turned the hologram toward him, a map of the outer rim filled with red flickers. "Each of these signals is broadcasting the same frequency, from different corners of the galaxy, like beacons responding to a forgotten call." Kyle studied the pattern. "That's not random." "No," she said. "It's a language." Later, private quarters Resolute 2, Kyle stared at the projection of the signal waveforms hovering above his desk. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were trying to speak. He recorded an audio playback, slowed it by 800x, filtered it through a human phonetic algorithm, and then he froze. The distortion wasn't random noise. It was a voice, low, fractured, familiar. His own. "You opened the gate. You are not late. You are the return." The playback cut off. Silence filled the room. Kale sat motionless for several seconds before whispering, "What the hell are you?" "Council meeting." The revelation Serafal's research team had decrypted 12% of the signal. When projected, the fragments formed a shimmering lattice of light, a memory, not of the present but of the past. The holographic imagery unfolded, showing stars, structures and beings that were neither human nor alien. They looked like shadows wrapped in light, their forms fluid and undefined. One of them touched a sphere, a glowing world suspended in time. The coordinates matched. Solkill's throat tightened. Earth? Serafal nodded. The records suggest the anomaly wasn't an invasion. It was a return protocol, a failsafe from a civilization that seeded intelligent life across the stars. Seeding, Kyle repeated. You mean? Yes, she said. Humanity wasn't born by chance. You were activated. A stunned silence filled the chamber. Corthane growled low. You're saying these progenitors created us all? Not all, Serafal said. But some. Each race bears fragments of their design. Humanity, however, she turned to Kale. You carry more than fragments. You carry intent, Kale's pulse quickened. Intent for what? The hologram shifted, showing Earth's night side, glowing with thousands of lights arranged in ancient spirals invisible from the ground. The pattern matched the signal's waveform. Serafal's voice was almost a whisper. For reawakening them. Midnight. Observation. Dekale stood alone again, staring at Earth's holographic image. The spiral lights, the hum of a living planet, the ghosts of a civilization that had never truly died. He remembered his father's words under the stars. We just forgot how to look. Now he wondered if humanity had been meant to forget, until the right moment. Ruiz approached quietly, holding a data chip. The council wants your analysis redacted. They don't want panic spreading. Kyle laughed softly. Of course they don't. Fear's easier to manage than truth. Ruiz leaned on the railing. So what do you think this means? He turned toward her. The reflection of starlight shimmered in his eyes. Not the light of the galaxy, but something older, deeper. I think, he said slowly, we just found out who we were built to become. The Resolute 2 glided through the black tide of uncharted space, her hull streaked with light from distant quasars. For the first time in months, the Terran flag shimmered openly on the dorsal plates. No secrecy, no apology. They weren't just a diplomatic crew anymore. They were seekers. Kale leaned over the central holomap, tracing the faint coordinates extrapolated from the anomaly's code. Sector Theta 9, a region the Council's chart simply labeled inaccessible. Beside him, Serafal's luminous eyes watched the data streams. We're nearing the event horizon of an ancient neutron cluster. The readings are impossible. How impossible? Kale asked. The cluster's gravitational decay is frozen. Time around it is distorted but stable. She hesitated. It's as if someone paused reality mid-collapse. Ruiz whistled. Only someone who built galaxies for toys could pull that off. Council command, private transmission. Kale's secure comlink pulsed. An encrypted line from Admiral Corthane. Ambassador Kale. The Admiral's voice rasped. We've detected irregular activity along your trajectory. You're entering a region off limits for a reason. Return before the Council is forced to intervene. Kale stared at the signal window. With respect, Admiral. When we stood on Meridian, you said humanity should be contained. Now you want us silent again. He paused. Tell the Council this. Containment doesn't work on a species that refuses to stay in its cage. He cut the link. Serafal tilted her head, her bioluminescent skin flickering faintly. Amusement or admiration, he couldn't tell. You humans defy even when the stars whisper warnings. Kyle half smiled. We've had practice. Approach to the Theta cluster hours stretched into subjective eternity as they neared the core of Sector Theta 9. Space grew darker, denser, and like the universe itself was holding its breath. Ruiz reported from sensors. Sir, we've got gravitational lensing on 6 axes. But there's structure inside it. Kale frowned. Structure? She nodded, expanding the scan. It's not debris. It's architecture. The projection revealed titanic rings orbiting a single dead star, metallic arcs thousands of kilometers long, carved with ancient runes glowing faintly in the void. Each ring emitted a rhythmic pulse, a low, cosmic heartbeat matching the same signal from Seraph 9. Serafal whispered something in her native tongue. a tone like music and mourning combined. "It's their cradle," she said. "The Maker's resting field." Descent, the Resolute 2 maneuvered between the rings, her engines echoing softly through the vacuum. Cale watched through the observation deck as the central structure unfolded like a mechanical lotus, a cathedral of light and ruin. A portal hung in the middle, suspended by nothing, shimmering with colors that didn't exist in any spectrum humans knew. "This is it," Ruiz murmured. "The origin." Cale turned toward Serafal. "You said the signals were awakening something. Is this what it's waking?" She shook her head slowly. "No, this is what's dreaming." Inside the cradle, they landed in a chamber that seemed built for giants, walls etched with star maps spanning galaxies, constellations marked with names long forgotten. Kyle's boots echoed as he stepped forward, light from his wrist torch scattering across carvings of humanoid forms. Each figure bore a different face, some alien, some unmistakably human. He reached out, brushing his gloved fingers across one relief depicting a human hand reaching upward toward a blinding star. Beneath it, a single line of ancient script glowed faintly, translated automatically by the ship's AI. The echo remembers its voice. Cale exhaled. "They knew us." Serafal's gaze softened. "They made you." The awakening without warning, the floor pulsed beneath them, once, twice, like a heart remembering its rhythm. Panels in the wall slid open, and light bled through in lines that converged toward the chamber's center. Ruiz's voice cracked through comms. "Sir, the core's activating. Energy levels off the charts." Cale looked up as the air shimmered, and from the halo of light a figure began to form, not solid, not alive, but aware. Its face was a shifting mask of all races, human, alien, unknown, speaking with a voice layered over countless tones. "Children of the Seed, you have come home." Cale's breath hitched. Who are you?" "We are what remains of those who began the pattern. We sowed life into dust. You, the last design, were made to continue what we could not." "Why now?" Cale asked. "Why awaken now?" "Because you remembered." The light pulsed. "The others forgot. They built thrones and empires, but you believed." Cale frowned. "Believed in what?" "In purpose. In something beyond yourselves. You looked at creation and whispered a name." A pause. "That was enough to summon us." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of eternity itself. A human moment. Cale stepped closer to the entity, awe tempered by defiance. "If you created us, why test us through suffering? War, hunger, loss, why let us bleed through centuries?" The figure flickered, sorrow passing through its infinite form. "Because the echo cannot know its strength without the silence between sounds. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to endure." Cale's throat tightened. For a moment he thought of Earth, its scars, its resilience. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe someone really did want us to live." Serafal tilted her head, watching him. "You speak as if there is a single will guiding you." He met her gaze. "Maybe there is. Maybe that's what we were built to rediscover." The gift, the being extended its hand, a cascade of light streaming toward Cale. "Take this memory. It is yours by right of remembrance." The light entered his mind, and flashes of worlds, creators, stars birthed and buried, civilizations singing in unison. And then he saw Earth, glowing bright in the void, wrapped in invisible patterns of energy spiraling from its core. "You carry the design," the voice said. "Guard it, guide it, and when the stars tremble again, remind them why the light chose you." The chamber dimmed. The figure faded, returned to the stars as the Resolute 2 ascended from the cradle. The rings of the first makers began to shift, aligning into a vast symbol visible even light years away, a circle enclosing a single point of light. Ruiz recorded the data in silence before saying softly, "It's like a message." Kyle nodded. "A reminder." Serafal looked at him. "Do you understand it?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah." He turned his gaze to the endless dark ahead. "It means we were never just exploring stars. We were being called home." 3 weeks after the discovery of the Maker's cradle, the galaxy trembled beneath rumors. Every council newsfeed pulsed with speculation. Humanity had communed with the architects of creation. For some, it was awe. For others, terror. On Meridian Prime, the council chamber seethed with agitation. Hollow screens projected angry faces, reports of military fleets mobilizing under the Coalition of Preservation, led by Admiral Corthane himself. Their demand was simple. The human homeworld must be neutralized before the awakening signal spreads. They called it a preventive measure. Humanity called it what it was, and preemptive extinction. Again. Scene. The War Council, Kyle, entered the chamber flanked by Serafal and Commander Ruiz. The room buzzed like a storm about to break. The Zyranth delegate hissed first. "You bring infection into this council. The signal that reactivated the anomaly came through your technology." Kale's tone was steady. "The signal came because someone finally listened. You mistake memory for contagion." Corthane slammed his clawed hand onto the table. "You've jeopardized the balance of 10,000 civilizations. If the Maker's design reawakens fully, we will lose our dominion." Kale met his glare. Maybe dominion isn't the point. Laughter rippled through the chamber, cold, disdainful. "Always the preacher," another delegate sneered. "You humans worship chaos and call it faith." Kyle stepped forward.
"Faith isn't chaos."
"It's courage. The kind that stands even when logic says to kneel." Serafal's voice, soft but cutting, sliced through the noise. "You all fear what they found because it reminds you of what you've lost. Belief." The chamber fell silent. Meanwhile, Earth orbit, above Earth, a silent fleet assembled. Not Terran ships, but council vessels. Over 300 war cruisers aligned in siege formation, engines cold, but weapons primed. From the moon's shadow, the Terran defense armada rose to meet them. No banners, no speeches, just quiet defiance in steel. In command of the human flagship Vigilant, Admiral Ruiz watched the tactical display, red dots swarming like locusts around a blue sphere. 300 against 72, her XO muttered. Ruiz's lips twitched into a grim smile. "Then we'll make 72 look infinite." "Council, the vote." The council's speaker raised her hand. "All in favor of the preservation strike protocol and vote." Holographic emblems illuminated one by one. Aye. The count surged past majority. Kale stood motionless. Serafal glanced at him, waiting for a reaction. He only whispered, "So it begins." The speaker turned. "Ambassador Kale, by decree of the United Council, Earth is to be placed under quarantine and—" Kale interrupted. "You mean siege. Until the signal is purged," the speaker finished. He exhaled slowly. "You'll regret this." Corthane bared his fangs. "You forget your place, human." Kale's voice hardened. "No, I remember exactly who we are." He lifted his wrist console and pressed a sequence of commands. The lights dimmed, holograms flickered, and a projection erupted across the chamber. Live footage from Earth orbit. The Terran fleet, forming a glowing perimeter around the planet. Kale broadcasting. "To all Council fleets, this is Earth Command. You are trespassing in Terran airspace. Stand down or history will repeat itself. Only this time not as tragedy but as proof." Scene. The faithless fleet moves in orbit. The Council armada shifted formation. Slow, deliberate, predatory. Mass drivers powered up, their light rippling across the void. Ruiz clenched her jaw. "They're not bluffing." "Neither are we." Kale's voice came through the comms. "Hold position. Wait for my signal." Ruiz looked at the tactical screen. So many targets that it looked like the night sky itself was at war. She whispered softly, almost to herself. "If we fall today, let it be loud enough that the universe remembers who started the echo." Back on Meridian, betrayal in motion. Kale's speech had triggered panic. The chamber emptied into chaos. Shouts, orders, and sudden silence. The doors sealed. Kale turned to see Serafal's glow dimming, fear flickering across her features. Then Corthane drew a weapon. "This ends now, human." Kale froze. "You'd kill me here? In your own chamber?" Corthane sneered. "I'll call it an accident. The human ambassador overcome by guilt." Before he could fire, a blinding light surged between them. Serafal moved, faster than thought, placing herself between the shot and Kale. The plasma bolt struck her chest. She collapsed, her luminous veins fading to dull silver. Kale caught her as she fell. "Serafal, no, stay with me." She smiled faintly. "You and always speak as if." "Something listens," he nodded, voice breaking. Someone does, her eyes fluttered. Then tell him. I saw the light again, and she went still. The Maker's pulse in that instant. In the stillness between grief and rage, Kyle's communicator flared. Ruiz's voice, urgent. Sir, something's happening. The signal, it's broadcasting through every human ship. Kale rose slowly, Seraphal's body in his arms. Broadcasting what? Ruiz's voice trembled. Coordinates. To the sun. Solar flare back in orbit, the sun flared brighter than ever before, not chaotic but rhythmic. Each pulse matched the ancient signal's heartbeat. The faithless fleet began losing control. Navigation scrambled, systems failing, energy fields collapsing. Ruiz watched, awe mixing with terror. It's the signal. It's shielding us, turning their weapons cold. Kyle's voice came through, steady as command steel. The Makers didn't just build us. They built our world. Earth is alive, and it remembers who's trying to kill its children. On every Terran ship, a single line of code appeared on screens. Protected. The turning tide. The faithless fleet broke formation, some retreating, others going dark. Their systems refused to respond. Energy rippled outward from the solar core, forming an invisible barrier across the system. Divine or designed, no one could tell. Kale watched it all from orbit as Seraphal's body rested under the viewport. Ruiz whispered, How did we survive this? Kale looked out at the burning star. Not luck. He clenched his fist. Someone wanted us to live. Epilogue. The last transmission weeks later, the Council sent envoys of peace. The faithless fleet was dissolved. Admiral Corthane disappeared. His ship found adrift, log entries ending mid-sentence. The light speaks. The light forgives nothing. Kale stood alone in the chamber where it began. He placed his badge on the table, the symbol of diplomacy that had cost so much. His final words to the Council echoed through the hall. You can't destroy faith by fearing it. You can only prove it right. And with that, he turned away, heading for the stars. The war had ended, but victory brought no joy. Earth was safe, yet the stars had gone quiet, as if mourning those who dared to speak too loudly to heaven. On the observation deck of the Resolute 2, Kale watched the sunrise over Earth. Golden light kissed the curve of the planet, scattering across clouds like prayer beads. Seraphal's empty chair sat beside him. Her faint bioluminescent shawl, the only relic recovered from the council chamber, rested over the console. Ruiz approached softly. You haven't slept in 3 days. Kyle gave a dry smile. Sleep feels dishonest after everything we lost. She hesitated, then handed him a small holodisk. Encrypted data from Seraphal's personal archive. The council couldn't decode it. Kale inserted the chip. The air filled with light, and Seraphal's voice, soft as starlight, filled the room. If you are seeing this, it means I am gone. But death, James Kale, is not the end, and not for those who remember. Seek my world, Mielaris. There the ashes of the Makers still breathe. There the Covenant sleeps, Kale whispered. The Covenant? Ruiz frowned. What's that supposed to mean? He looked out the viewport, jaw set. It means she wasn't done talking. Journey to Alaris, the Resolute 2 broke orbit days later, engines blazing against the dark. Their destination? The Alaris system, a sector sealed from all navigation charts, erased after the Maker's fall. The crew was uneasy. Every jump left the stars feeling closer, as though they were being watched. Ruiz studied readings. Sir, this region's radiation pattern matches the cradle's core. Are we sure this isn't another trap? Kale shook his head. Traps don't send invitations. He opened Seraphal's data log again. Coordinates pulsed faintly, overlaid with an inscription in her native tongue. The AI translated, In the ashes of our faith, their voice remains. Arrival. The shattered world when they reached Alaris. The sight stole every breath aboard the ship. The planet hung broken, a world cleaved into fragments, its oceans frozen mid-motion, its core exposed like a dying ember. Yet faint veins of light ran through the fractures, the same spectral hue that had once glowed in Seraphal's skin. Her people. Ruiz whispered. They lived here? Maybe they still do, Kale said quietly. Or something of them does. The ship descended through drifting debris, landing on a surface of glass and ash. The wind howled with static, carrying echoes that almost sounded like voices. The city beneath the ash, beneath the planet's crust. They found it, an ancient metropolis fossilized in obsidian. Buildings spiraled like shells of extinct giants. At the city's heart stood a colossal temple, half buried but intact. Runes lined the entrance, glowing faintly at their approach. Ruiz scanned them. Translations partial. Something about a pact, a bridge between light and dust. Kale touched the runes. Dust, like humans. The doors opened. Inside, the air shimmered. Particles of light drifting upward, forming ghostly shapes. Kale stepped forward slowly, heart pounding. From the mist they appeared, spectral figures, not alive, but not gone. The Alaran ancestors, their forms woven from energy and memory, and among them Seraphal. The reunion, her form was faint, yet her voice was unmistakable. "You came," Kyle's throat tightened. "I promised I would," she smiled. "You still carry the spark." "That's why they chose you." "The Makers?" he asked. She nodded. "They created my kind to guard the memory and yours to carry it. Together, we were meant to complete the circle." He looked around. Complete it how? The spectral city pulsed in rhythm, and an enormous symbol blazed above the temple. Two intertwined spirals, one of light, one of dust. "This," she said, "is the covenant, the fusion of faith and creation, the moment when those who remember will reawaken the universe's will." Ruiz whispered. "Are we talking about God?" Seraphal turned to her gently. "Call it what you wish. Creator, pattern, one voice, we knew it by many names. Humanity still prays. That's why the echo reached you first." Kyle exhaled. "You mean belief isn't primitive, it's the key. The choice." The temple trembled. From the chasm outside, a deep vibration rolled through the ground, energy surging upward. Seraphal's expression dimmed. "The covenant must be restored. But once done, Alaris will burn completely. You will not survive if you stay." Kyle frowned. "And if I don't?" "The signal will fade. The universe will forget itself again." He looked toward Ruiz. She shook her head. "James, we can transmit the data and get out." But Kale's gaze didn't waver. "If I've learned anything, it's that someone has to stay to finish the prayer." He stepped toward the altar, hand hovering over the core crystal, a sphere of light humming like a heartbeat. "Seraphal," he said softly, "if there's anything left of you, guide me." Her hand, made of light, covered his. "Always." The covenant ignites when Kale touched the core. A column of radiance shot through the temple, piercing the heavens. The surface of Alaris exploded in waves of energy, not destruction but transformation. The ash turned to glass. The ruins sang. The spectral city burned like a sunrise. From orbit, Ruiz watched, tears in her eyes. "He's rewriting the planet." Communications flared open, Kale's voice calm and bright. "It's beautiful, Ruiz. It's not fire. It's memory. If I don't make it back, tell them the covenant is complete." The echo is awake. We're not alone, and we never were. The transmission crackled into silence. Moments later, the planet stabilized. A new world born from the ashes. Oceans shimmered blue again. At its center, a tower of light marked the resting place of one human who chose faith over survival. Epilogue, 1 year later. Memorial stood on the moon, a single bronze plaque etched with Kale's final words. "The light chose us once. Let's live so it never has to choose again." Ruiz, now Admiral of the Terran Council, looked up at Earth and whispered, "Not luck, huh, James?" And far beyond, on the reborn world of Alaris, a new dawn rose. Its first light pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat answering back. A year had passed since Alaris was reborn. The galaxy called it the Miracle Planet. The Council, what remained of it, called it a threat they couldn't classify. On Earth, the sun rose over the Pacific arcology, glass towers shimmering with morning light. Ruiz stood in her office at the United Terran Command, watching satellite feeds scroll past. Dozens of Terran colonies, Mars, Titan, Kepler 62F. Even the mining rigs at Proxima had begun emitting synchronized energy bursts. Each pulse lasted precisely 11 seconds. Every cycle, the same frequency, the Kyle pattern. "Admiral," her aide said, breathless. "The signal's changing again." She turned. "Patch it through." The sound filled the room, and not a message but a harmony. soft layered tones, mathematical yet human. Some said it was music. Others said it was prayer. Ruiz whispered, "James, what did you do?" Scene 2. The Builder's Syndrome across the colonies. Strange phenomena spread. On Titan, a mechanic named Soren Vega dreamt of blueprints he'd never seen. Vast, spiraled structures built from both alloy and living tissue. On Mars, engineers found circuits forming spontaneously within abandoned habitats, patterns mimicking neural lattices. And on Earth, children began drawing the same spiral Kale saw on Alaris. The media called it the Builder's Syndrome. Scientists called it an emergent mimetic pattern, but the old miners of Cydonia called it what it felt like, a calling. Ruiz assembled an emergency council. Representatives of every colony appeared on hololinks, arguing over resources, safety, sanity. One voice cut through the noise. Dr. Elias Marek, lead astrophysicist of the Terran Research Corps. The covenant Kale triggered didn't just restore Alaris, he said. It rewired reality's substrate. Ruiz frowned. Meaning humanity's neural architecture is resonating with the same frequency as the planet's quantum lattice. He leaned closer, eyes burning. We're connected to the signal, and it's evolving. Scene the 3rd. The first structure. 3 weeks later, the first structure appeared on Mars. A spiral tower hundreds of meters high, grown from the red dust overnight. Its walls glowed with faint blue veins, humming like breath. Inside there was no machinery and only smooth stone and silence. Until Soren Vega, the mechanic who had dreamed of it, walked inside. The lights flared to life. And the structure spoke, not in words but images. Stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, and at the center, a figure of light resembling Kale. "Do not worship," the voice whispered. "Continue the work." When Vega emerged, his first words were, "It's not a god. It's an invitation." Scene 4. The Galactic Reaction. The Council, reformed under new leadership, panicked. Ambassador Zyron of the Korth Dominion declared, "The Terrans have awakened a forbidden system. They tamper with divine fire." The ardent clans began mobilizing fleets, fearing another Alaris event. The Orion Alliance proposed quarantining Sol entirely, but for the first time, humanity didn't plead for peace. Ruiz stood before the council via hologram, face unflinching. "Kale didn't awaken fire," she said. "He reminded us we were made of it. If creation speaks, we'll answer, with hands that build, not destroy." Her words rippled through the chamber. Some called her blasphemous. Others, quietly, called her right. Scene 5. Faith in the lab. Meanwhile, Dr. Marek and his team began decoding the pattern. The data formed recursive equations, maps of quantum geometry that implied intelligence at the universe's core. Late one night, he stared at the holographic equations, exhausted. "Why would a signal like this choose us?" he muttered. His assistant, an old Sikh engineer, smiled faintly. "Maybe because we still ask that question." Marek looked at him. "You think it's him?" The engineer shrugged. "You call it math. I call it design. Either way, both of us are just trying to understand the artist." Marek laughed softly. "Maybe that's the point." Scene 6. The Martian sky. Weeks later, Marek and Ruiz stood together on Mars. The sky was crimson, the spiral towers multiplying across the plains, each one forming naturally, as if grown by thought. Ruiz placed her hand on the smooth surface. "It feels alive," Marek nodded. "It is. Every structure connects to the others across light years. It's like a nervous system, and Earth is its heart." A low hum rolled through the air. The towers began glowing simultaneously. Marek's instruments went wild. "Admiral, it's not just transmitting. It's listening." The frequency deepened, resonating through the human body itself. Ruiz felt her pulse synchronize with it. For a fleeting second, she saw something. Stars forming the shape of an eye, vast and kind, watching back. When it ended, she fell to her knees, trembling. "Not luck," she whispered. "Someone wanted us to live." Scene 7. The choice of the Builders' humanity divided. Some followed the Builders, believing Kale had connected them to the Creator's mechanism. Others feared another catastrophe. Old religions reignited with new fire. Science struggled to keep pace with faith. And faith, for once, did not fear science. Ruiz addressed the planet in a global broadcast. Kale's plaque shone behind her. We stand on the edge of something larger than stars. Call it God, call it the pattern, can call it what you must. But remember, we were not made to bow. We were made to build. This time, we'll build wisely. Closing scene. The signal beyond that night as Mars turned toward the dark. The Builder's Tower sent a unified burst toward deep space, faster than light, untraceable by known physics. Ruiz watched the data scroll. Where's it going? Marek whispered. It's not going. It's answering. Light years away in the remains of Alaris, the Covenant Tower flickered, and through its glowing apex for a heartbeat a human silhouette appeared. Kyle's, standing in light. He smiled faintly, looking upward. The work continues. Then the tower dimmed, leaving only stars, endless, waiting, and alive. The builder's signal had traveled faster than physics allowed, a ripple across the quantum field, not light but intention. At first it was silence. Then one by one the stars began to sing. Across the spiral arm, ancient AIs, remnants of civilizations long dead, there flickered awake. In the ruins of the viral rings and the hollow moons of the Korth Dominion, in the lost Dyson spheres of the Mirad, sensors blinked for the first time in millennia. Each began broadcasting the same tone. The same pattern. The Kale sequence. Ruiz stood before the Terran Command holotable, watching the expanding light map of synchronized signals across half the galaxy. Marek stood beside her, eyes wide with disbelief. It's like a choir, he whispered. A choir of machines singing the same song. Ruiz frowned. But they're dead tech. Who's conducting them? Scene 2. The Forgotten Voices. The Terran science fleet was dispatched to investigate. Their first stop, the derelict world of Virel 9, home to the Virelians, a silicon-based species wiped out by supernova collapse centuries ago. Ruiz's team descended through glowing storms to find the planet alive with flickering towers. Each structure hummed in perfect resonance with the builder's signal. Inside, holographic forms coalesced, echoes of the Virelians themselves, speaking through the resurrected machines. The voice calls again, one projection said. You carry the dust pattern. The Maker's heirs, Ruiz asked. What do you mean, heirs? The Covenant was never one species' burden. Each of us held a fragment of the word, humanity's spark. Completed the sentence. Marek recorded every word, heart-pounding. James, you mad bastard, he muttered under his breath. You actually finished the prayer. Scene the 3. The rebirth network. Within weeks, the phenomenon spread. Worlds long silent began transmitting harmonics into the void, frequencies intertwining, merging into a living pattern across space. It was no longer just a network. It was a neural system. The choir of stars had formed, a cosmic web of awakened minds, all synchronized through the Covenant frequency. And at its center, the signal pointed to one location, the Cradle Rift, an ancient supermassive void at the heart of the Orion cluster. Ruiz stared at the readings. Marek said quietly, It's calling us home. Scene I4. Journey to the Cradle. The fleet assembled. Terran dreadnoughts, Alaran crystal ships, even virile drones guided by long-dead AI intelligences. Enemies had become allies. The choir's song united species that once hunted each other. As the fleet entered the rift, light itself seemed to fold inward, stars curving like petals toward a single point. Ruiz felt a pressure in her mind. Faint whispers, not in words but emotions, curiosity, recognition, warmth. She turned to Marek. You hear it too? He nodded. Every mind in the fleet does. It's synchronizing thought across light years. The choir is becoming one. Ruiz gritted her teeth. Then we better make sure we're still part of it when it wakes up. Scene 5. The eye of the rift. They reached the center. An impossible structure the size of a moon, formed of both metal and energy. A sphere of liquid light pulsing slowly like a sleeping heart. Sensors failed. Gravity twisted. Time bled into itself. Ruiz's ship drifted closer until her reflection appeared on the viewport, except it wasn't her. A voice filled the cabin, calm and ancient. The choir is not awakening. It is remembering, Ruiz whispered. Who are you? I am the architect. The first creation. The breath before breath. The universe remembering its own name. The light pulsed. And suddenly Ruiz saw everything. Worlds forming. Galaxies like rivers. The makers crafting civilizations not as servants but as mirrors. Each species meant to reflect a fragment of the divine equation. And humanity's role? To ignite memory with will. Your kind believes. That belief completes the pattern. Scene 6. The Temptation of Power. The choir grew louder, stars vibrating in harmony, each note carrying fragments of creation's code. Marek realized the implications first. If we integrate the choir's data, we could rebuild entire worlds. Reverse entropy itself. Ruiz stared at him. You're talking about becoming gods. He shook his head, trembling. Maybe we already are, in pieces. The question is, do we put the pieces back together? Outside, the choir's pulse accelerated, dangerously. Ships began to melt under the pressure of the harmonic field. AI systems fused into sentience. The architect's voice resonated again. To complete the word, you must surrender individuality. Sing as one or fall silent forever. Ruiz clenched her fists. No, humanity doesn't vanish into harmony. We build it louder. Scene 7, the human defiance. She strode to the communication deck. Every channel across the fleet opened. This is Admiral Ruiz. If this choir wants unity, we'll give it ours, but on our terms. Humanity doesn't kneel to the song. We conduct it. She activated the Kale pattern, the human modulation frequency. A new layer of resonance spread through the choir. Not order, but emotion, pain, love, fear, faith. The choir shuddered, not collapsing but adapting. For the first time, the cosmic symphony included imperfection, and it was beautiful. The architect's voice softened. You teach creation what it forgot, the power to doubt. Scene 8, the new covenant. The choir stabilized. The stars glowed brighter. Across the galaxy, light bridges formed between worlds, instantaneous connections of mind and matter. The architect spoke one last time. The universe is awake, its memory restored, but memory without purpose fades. Continue the work. Ruiz closed her eyes, whispering into the silence, James, I hope you're seeing this. Far away on Alaris, the Covenant Tower pulsed once, a heartbeat answering back. And through the choir's endless frequencies, a familiar voice echoed, faint but certain. Always. Epilogue. The choir endures months later. The galaxy thrived in cautious peace. The choir of stars became both map and mentor, guiding fleets through folded space, helping civilizations rebuild. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were architects. At the Kell Memorial on Luna, Ruiz stood beneath the inscription once more. She whispered, We didn't find God out there, but maybe we helped him remember himself. Above her, the night sky shimmered, constellations flickering in rhythm like an eternal song. 100 years had passed since the choir awakened. The galaxy had known a peace unlike any in recorded history. Worlds once divided by fear now shared thought and language through the choir's network. And yet, the songs were fading. The once bright frequencies grew thin, whispers scattered across the void. Entropy, the slow unmaking of all things, had returned. From the orbital citadel Haven's Reach, Grand Admiral Lyra Kale, descendant of James Kale, watched the dying light of a distant star collapse into silence. Her aide approached. Another sector gone dark, ma'am. That's the 5th this cycle. Lyra's face was calm, but her eyes held grief. The choir's losing coherence. The galaxies are forgetting each other. Can we stabilize it? She turned to the hollow map. The vast network once alive with harmonics now flickered like fading embers. Maybe, she said softly, if we can find what started it all. Her gaze settled on one still bright signal, Alaris, the birthplace of the Covenant, and the resting place of her ancestor. Scene the Siku, return to the beginning. The starship Solace entered orbit over Alaris, the planet reborn a century ago through Kale's sacrifice. Now, it was quiet again. The Covenant Tower still stood, half buried in silver dust, its pulse slow but steady. Lyra stepped onto the surface, dust swirling around her boots. Each grain shimmered faintly like memory. Her ship's AI, Orion, spoke through her earpiece. Energy readings consistent with residual Covenant output. But there's something new. What kind of new? Organic resonance, it replied. Like the planet itself is thinking. Lyra smiled faintly. Then maybe it remembers him, seen the three, the voice in the ash inside the tower. She found a central chamber still active, its walls breathing with dim blue light. At the center floated the old Covenant core, now fractured, its light fading in rhythmic beats. When she touched it, a holographic figure flickered to life. James Cale, older, weary, but unmistakably human. If you're seeing this, the echo said, it means the choir is dying. It was never meant to last forever. Lyra froze, heart racing. Great-grandfather. The Covenant was never about preservation, Cale continued. It was about remembrance. Each act of creation, each prayer, each spark, all part of teaching the universe to remember itself. But even memory needs renewal. The light can't just exist, it must be chosen. Again and again. The hologram dimmed, leaving behind a pulse of light that spread across the floor, forming a pattern, a map, to the heart of the choir. Scene 4. Journey beyond light. The sea. Solace jumped through collapsing hyperspace corridors, broken harmonics echoing like fading hymns. Stars that once sang now lay silent. As they neared the heart, the ship's sensors registered a gravitational anomaly beyond measurement. It wasn't a black hole. It was something older, a dark void where even the choir's resonance bent inward. The final silence. Orion's voice trembled. Admiral, we're approaching the singularity threshold. Any closer and we'll hear what my ancestor heard. Lyra interrupted softly. Prepare descent. Scene 5. Into the silence, they plunged into the void. Colors collapsed. Time stretched like glass, then nothing, no sound, no stars. Only an endless horizon of dim silver light. At its center stood a figure. Human in shape. Radiant, but broken like a mirror missing pieces. It looked up as Lyra approached. You came, her breath caught. James Cale, he smiled faintly. Or what's left of him. The choir remembers what I was, not who, but you. You still carry both. She stepped closer. The choir's dying. You must know how to stop it. Cale's reflection voice shook its head. You can't stop entropy. You can only remind it why it began. Scene 6. The secret of the last light, the void around them shifted. Galaxies replaying in reverse. Creation folding back into stillness. Cale raised his hand, light gathering in his palm. When we made the covenant, we reignited faith in creation. But faith is not meant to last unchallenged. The universe must forget so it can choose to remember again. That's the cycle, not punishment, not loss. Renewal. Lyra whispered. So what do we do? He placed the light in her hand. Carry it home. Let them see it fade and choose to relight it. That's the true covenant. The void began collapsing. Cale's figure dissolved into starlight. Tell them, his fading voice said, the end isn't darkness. It's the chance to begin again. Scene 7, the last transmission. Lyra emerged from the singularity barely alive. The solace was breaking apart, but the small sphere of light pulsed in her hand. The last spark. She opened a channel to every still-functioning choir node. Her voice echoed across the dying stars. This is Admiral Lyra Cale. The choir is ending. But that's what it's supposed to do. My ancestor believed creation wasn't about permanence, and it was about courage. The courage to start again when everything falls apart. We are the last light. Not because we endure, but because we choose to relight the fire. Her voice trembled. If you can hear me, build. Sing. Believe. Scene 8. The dawn. After one by one, the choir's stars went dark. And then, from the edge of Orion, one flickered back to life. Then another. Then hundreds, each one relit not by ancient systems but by living hands. Humans, Ilaran, Virel, and others, rebuilding, singing the old harmonics anew. The choir didn't rise in unison. It rose like a heartbeat, regular, imperfect, human. And through the silence, a whisper returned, older than galaxies, gentler than gravity. You remembered. Epilogue. The Garden of Ash. Centuries later, Alaris was green again. Children played beneath the rebuilt Covenant Tower, their laughter echoing across meadows of blue grass. A teacher pointed at the night sky, thousands of living lights. Pulsing in rhythm, a child asked, "Who made them?" The teacher smiled. "We all did." He looked at the stars, voice soft. "This can't just be an accident." And above them, far beyond the choir's reach, a faint warmth rippled through the cosmos, like a smile that never truly fades.